Sometimes it's not the haunted houses you gotta watch out for. It's the ordinary stuff that can really get you, like a lake, right?
Yeah.
You're out there, it's a scorching summer day, you're just a kid splashing around having a blast. A few days later, bam, crippling headache, fever, the whole 9 yards. Turns out you picked up something called naegleriasis fowleri,
Oh, yeah.
otherwise known as the brain-eating amoeba.
Right.
And, I mean, just saying that sends shivers down my spine.
It really does.
And for a long time, that was basically it, a death sentence. But recently, this total curveball, this unexpected hero has emerged. Miltefosine.
Yeah,
And get this, it was first developed to fight cancer.
that's right.
So today, we are going deep on Miltefosine, how it tackles all these different enemies, and why it has everybody in the medical world so excited.
Yeah, it is really fascinating how Miltefosine is so unique. It doesn't go for that sort of I don't know, like a knockout punch right away, like a lot of conventional treatments,
Right.
or like a saboteur, Like, imagine if you didn't attack a factory head on,
Yeah.
but instead you just cut the power.
Okay.
Everything just shuts down.
Right.
That's Miltefosine. It disrupts the cell membrane, the fundamental part of the cell. No power, no function, no more threat.
That is seriously cool, but now my brain's going a mile a minute. How can one drug go after cancer cells, parasites, fungi? I mean, these are completely different things.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting. We got to think smaller. We're talking molecular level here.
Okay.
Miltefosine, it kind of throws 4 big punches, and each one is disrupting a vital process in these harmful cells. It's a 4-pronged attack, and it is effective.
Right.
It doesn't discriminate.
Okay, let's break down these punches one by one. First up, inhibiting the ACT protein. What's happening there?
Okay, so you can think of the ACT protein like the gas pedal on cell growth and survival.
Okay.
Miltefosine. That's slamming the brakes.
Oh.
No more speeding down the replication highway for these harmful cells.
So it cuts off their fuel supply.
Basically.
I love it. All right, so then there's this whole disrupting calcium homeostasis thing.
Right.
That sounds complicated.
It's a mouthful. But think of it this way. Calcium is like the communication system of the cell, right? Sending messages back
Yeah.
and forth.
Okay.
And miltefosine, it jams those signals. It causes chaos inside the cell.
Oh, wow.
No communication, no coordination, just dysfunction.
So it's not just stopping their growth, but it's throwing their whole system out of whack.
Exactly.
Okay. Inducing apoptosis. That sounds kind of final, doesn't it?
It is. Apoptosis is basically programmed cell death, like it's a controlled self-destruction.
Right.
And you know what? Miltefosine can flip that switch.
Oh, wow.
It forces the enemy to eliminate itself.
Talk about going out with a bang. Okay, last but not least, affecting phospholipid biosynthesis.
Right.
Now, I'm going to need a metaphor for that one because science...
Sure. Think of the cell membrane as a house of cards.
Okay.
They're delicate, and phospholipids, those are the building blocks.
Okay.
Miltefosine disrupts their production, kicks those cards right out, the whole structure collapses.
So essentially, just to put it all together for our listener, what makes Miltefosine such a game changer is that it targets these fundamental processes that are essential for the survival of all these bad actors. Whether we're talking cancer cells, parasites, fungi, you name it.
Yeah.
It's like pulling the plug on their entire operation.
You got it. And here's the thing. Because it's going after these core processes, it's effective against drug-resistant strains.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
You see, with traditional drugs, they usually target something very specific in a pathogen,
Right.
which makes it easier for resistance to develop.
Sure.
Miltefosine, it's a whole different ballgame.
So we've seen Miltefosine under the microscope taking down those bad guys. But let's talk real-world impact. One of the big wins has been against leishmaniasis, which is a nasty parasitic disease that really hits some parts of the world hard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Leishmaniasis is a huge problem, especially in parts of India.
Right.
We're talking terrible skin sores, organ damage, even death. The Bihar region has been really hit hard by this disease.
And before Miltefosine, the treatments were, well, they weren't great.
They were limited, to say the least.
Right.
Often ineffective, expensive,
Right.
and a lot of nasty side effects. It was a bad situation.
And then Miltefosine enters the scene, changes the game. I read about that study in Bihar, the clinical trial. They had something like a 94% cure rate with Miltefosine. 94%. I mean, that's unheard of.
Yeah, it was a major breakthrough. That trial was a turning point, not just for leishmaniasis, but for Miltefosine in general.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you had this safe, effective, pretty affordable treatment for a disease that had been neglected for a long time.
Right.
It was a big deal.
That's amazing. It's literally a lifesaver for so many people. And speaking of lifesavers, we have to talk about that teenager in the US who survived the brain-eating amoeba. Miltefosine was a part of that. And for a disease that was basically a death sentence, that case really offered some hope.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It was a landmark case. It really captured everyone's attention. But we got to remember, miltefosine wasn't working alone. The patient got a few different treatments, including some other antimicrobials and something called therapeutic hypothermia.
Right, therapeutic hypothermia. I've heard of that, but remind me.
So they basically cool the body down to protect the brain from damage. It's like hitting pause on the body's metabolism gives the brain a chance to heal.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it was a team effort.
It was.
But still, miltefosine was part of that cocktail and contributed to that teenager's survival. That's huge. It really speaks to the potential here. And it's not stopping there, right? We've got leishmaniasis, this brain-eating amoeba. What other infections are we looking at for miltefosine?
Well, there's Acanthamoeba keratitis, which I know it's a mouthful.
Yeah, you said it.
But it's a nasty eye infection that can happen to anyone, but especially contact lens wearers.
Oh no, as a contact lens devotee myself, I'm very interested now.
Yeah, and you should be. It can be really painful and even cause blindness in some cases.
That's terrifying. But miltefosine swoops in to save the day again.
That's right. It's showing a lot of promise treating Acanthamoeba keratitis.
Yeah.
There was actually this case in the UK where a patient was looking at potential blindness from this infection. They were treated with a bunch of different medications, miltefosine being one of them, and their vision was saved.
That's incredible. So it's not just treatment, it's preventing blindness too. Miltefosine is on a roll. Are researchers looking into using it for anything else?
Oh yeah, for sure. The research is exploding right now. There are studies going on looking at its use for treating Cryptococcus. It's a fungus that can be really dangerous, even life-threatening, for people with compromised immune systems. So we're talking people with HIV/AIDS, for example.
Wow, it seems like there's no stopping miltefosine.
And that's not all. They're also looking at it for Chagas disease and African trypanosomiasis, both parasitic diseases that impact millions around the world.
It's really amazing to see how one drug that was meant for something completely different is now offering hope for so many diseases. It shows you how important scientific curiosity is and what we can achieve when we work together.
I totally agree. It just goes to show that sometimes the biggest discoveries happen when we think outside the box, when we see the potential where we least expect it.
Miltefosine, it's breaking down barriers, right?
Yeah.
But it can't be all smooth sailing. There's got to be a catch. No drug's perfect, right? What are the challenges? What are we missing here?
Yeah, you're right. Miltefosine, it's a powerful tool, but every tool has limitations. One of the biggest ones we're seeing is resistance, especially with those leishmania parasites,
Oh, no.
especially in Nepal.
Okay.
There have been cases where they've developed mutations that make them less susceptible to miltefosine.
So even though it has this really unique way of going after them, those parasites are finding ways to fight back.
So are we back to square one, looking for a new wonder drug?
Well, it's not exactly back to the drawing board, but it does show you that we're always in this race in medicine, trying to stay ahead of these organisms as they evolve.
Right.
In those Nepal cases, the resistance was linked to mutations in the parasite's transporter proteins. So these proteins, they're like the gatekeepers of the cell,
Right.
controlling what goes in and out. And these mutations, they basically shut the door on miltefosine. Don't let it in to do its job.
They built a wall to keep the drug out. That is so frustrating. But scientists love a good challenge. I bet they're not giving up that easily. Oh, absolutely not. They're coming up with strategies to tackle this resistance. One really promising one is combination therapy. So instead of just miltefosine on its own,
Okay.
they're looking at using it with other drugs that work in different ways.
Okay.
It's like a pincer movement, hit those parasites from all sides, and that makes it much harder for them to develop resistance.
Strength in numbers. I like it. What about other strategies? What else are we looking at?
Well, on top of combination therapies, there's a big push for surveillance, keeping an eye out for resistance, and developing new and better drugs. We have to be proactive.
Right.
Watch out for any signs that resistance is developing so we're not caught off guard.
Right.
And researchers, they're already developing new miltefosine-like drugs, just tweaking them a little bit,
Wow.
so they can get around those resistance mechanisms and stay one step ahead.
So it's a constant back and forth,
It is.
a game of chess between science and these ever-evolving pathogens.
Exactly.
Well, at least the work goes on. That's good to know.
It does, and this is where the miltefosine story gets really interesting. You see, it shows us just how connected scientific discovery can be.
Hmm.
Here we have this drug. It was meant for cancer, and now it's showing huge promise against all these different infections. It just reminds us that we need to be open-minded.
Right?
Look at all the possibilities, even if a drug wasn't designed for a certain disease. You just never know what you might find.
It's like opening one door and discovering a whole network of other rooms. It really makes you wonder what other incredible breakthroughs are out there just waiting for us to find them, right?
Totally.
Miltefosine, from cancer to infection fighter. It really speaks to the power of scientific curiosity and reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected discoveries lead to the biggest solutions. And that wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating world of Miltefosine. We hope you enjoyed listening. Until next time, keep those questions coming and never stop exploring the amazing world of science.
We are bound together as one whole. Each part